I thought Valentine's night would change my life.
What is
I
happening?
kept touching the ring in my pocket while music thumped through Emily's apartment. "You're quiet," she said, smiling too easily. "Just nervous," I said. Ryan clapped my back. "Relax, man. Tonight's about love." Lucas raised his glass. "Two forever." Everyone laughed, and I laughed too, believing them. The room smelled like wine and cheap roses. I trusted them with everything. I moved toward the hallway to find Emily, planning my speech. I heard Ryan's voice behind a closed door. "Lock it." Lucas laughed softly. Emily whispered, "He won't come back here." My steps slowed. My chest tightened. "We shouldn't," she said, then paused. Ryan replied, "You already decided." I told myself I was misunderstanding. I told myself friends didn't lie like this. I pushed the door open. No screaming followed. No dramatic crash. Just silence and three faces turning toward me. Emily's mouth opened, then closed. Ryan said my name like it could fix things. Lucas looked at the floor. My hands shook so hard the ring fell. It hit the carpet, dull and final. I stared at it, thinking how small forever looked. "Say something," Emily whispered. I couldn't. My throat burned. Ryan stepped closer. "Listen, it's not what you think." I laughed once, sharp and broken. "Then tell me what to think." Lucas muttered, "We messed up." I nodded slowly. "You planned this?" Emily cried. I was confused. I asked, "Confused about loving me?" She reached for me. I stepped back. Music still played outside. Someone knocked, asking if we were okay. Ryan answered, "Yeah." I felt invisible. "How long?" I asked. Emily said, "It just happened." Lucas said nothing. I looked at him. "How long?" He swallowed. A while. My stomach dropped. Every memory rewrote itself. I walked out without shouting. Ryan followed. "Don't do this." I turned. "You already did." Lucas called my name. I didn't answer. Outside, cold air slapped my face. I sat in my car, gripping the wheel, breathing like I was drowning. My phone buzzed. Emily texted, "Please come back." I turned it off. I drove until the city blurred. I spoke aloud to an empty seat. "You trusted them." My voice cracked. I parked near a dark park and sat there shaking. I realized something simple and cruel. Love doesn't warn you before it breaks you. That night didn't just end my engagement. It ended the man I was. I drove away knowing nothing would ever feel safe again. I stayed parked until dawn crept in. My hands stopped shaking, but my chest stayed hollow. I called my sister and hung up before she answered. I called again. "Talk to me," she said. "I can't go home," she asked. "What happened?" "Said everything." She breathed. "Come here." I promised I would, then didn't. Emily kept calling. Ryan sent messages. Lucas sent nothing. I read one text. I deleted 10. "I'm sorry I felt useless" on a glowing screen. I whispered, "You chose this," to no one. I imagined the future I planned and watched it burn quietly. I understood something else then. Betrayal isn't loud. It waits for trust, then strikes when you're smiling. Started the engine as the sun rose, carrying the sound of that door opening inside me forever. I knew I would never explain this night the same way again. People would ask, and I would shrug. Inside, I would remember the carpet, the ring, the silence. I promised myself one thing while driving away. I would not beg. I would not scream. I would survive this quietly, even if it hurt every second. Valentine's night didn't give me love, taught me truth, and truth stayed. I sat with that lesson as the road stretched ahead. I didn't know the future yet, but I felt the past release me. The man who walked into that bedroom was gone. The man driving forward was broken, awake, and finally honest with himself. I didn't know then how much that honesty would cost, but the price had already been paid. Nothing about me would ever return to before. I drove on, carrying silence, shock, and a heart learning. I woke up on Emily's couch because I never went home. My phone buzzed. Emily stood near the kitchen, eyes red. "You stayed," she said quietly. "I didn't sleep," I said. My voice shook. "We need to talk." She nodded fast. "Yes, please." please. I sat up. Tell me I imagined it. She rubbed her arms. I can't. My chest tightened. Try, she whispered. I'm sorry. Stood say it clearly. She cried harder. I slept with them. I swallowed. Both. She hesitated. That pause hurt most. Yes. I laughed without humor. So it wasn't a mistake, she said. I was drunk, I asked, twice. She looked away. Different nights. My head buzzed. Choices, I said. You chose them, she whispered. I didn't plan it. I replied, planning isn't required. She reached for me. I love you. I stepped back. You loved me yesterday too. She shook her head. It's complicated, I said. Love isn't. She cried. I was lonely, I asked, while I was working. She nodded. Ryan listened. I laughed. He called me his brother. She whispered. Lucas understood me. Said he promised loyalty. My hands trembled. They knew my weaknesses. She sobbed. I never meant to hurt you. Megan stood by the doorway, arms crossed. She finally spoke. Emily told me everything. I looked at her, and Megan said softly, I can't defend her. Emily snapped. Don't judge me, Megan replied. I'm not. I'm watching. Silence filled the room. I asked Emily how long. She said months. The word crushed me. Every smile was a lie. She shook her head. Some moments were real, I said. Not anymore. I sat down again because my legs felt weak. Did they compete? Emily gasped. No, I stared. Did you compare me? She whispered. Sometimes I closed my eyes. Stop. She said. I was confused, I replied. You were selfish. Megan looked down. Emily said. I hate myself. Said that doesn't help me. She cried louder. Tell me what to do. I answered. You already did it. Ryan texted my phone. I showed her. He says he's sorry. She said he is. I snapped. Don't speak for him. Lucas called. I let it ring. You protected them, I said. You protected yourself, she argued.
I said.
At my cost. She whispered, I didn't think you'd find out. That sentence finished me. So you plan silence? I said. She fell to her knees. Please don't leave. I felt nothing. It scared me. I'm numb, I said. I should be screaming. She crawled closer. Scream then. I said, no. Megan stepped aside, opening the door. I'll give you space, she said. Emily looked at me. Can we fix this? I answered. I don't know who you are, she said. I'm still me, I replied. The version I loved is gone. I grabbed my jacket. Where are you going? Emily asked. I said, anywhere else, she cried. I'll wait. I shook my head. Don't, Megan said. Take care of yourself. I nodded once. At the door, Emily whispered, I never meant to betray you. I said, intent doesn't erase damage. I stepped outside. Cold air hit my face. I didn't know where I was going. I only knew I couldn't stay. I signed the lease without reading it. The landlord said, cash is fine. I said, good. The apartment smelled like dust and old paint. I dropped my bag and sat on the floor. This is it, I told myself. No answer came. My phone buzzed. I turned it face down. That night, sleep refused me. I stared at the ceiling and said, stop. My mind didn't listen. Emily's voice returned. Ryan's laugh followed. Lucas looking away burned worst. I whispered, enough. But memories attacked anyway. I checked the time. 2:11 a.m., I checked again. 2:12. I laughed softly. You're pathetic, I said to the dark. My phone rang. I ignored it. It rang again. I sighed and answered. What? I said. Claire's voice filled the room. You alive? I said barely. She asked, where are you? I said somewhere cheap. She replied, come home. I said I can't. She paused. Then talk. I stayed silent. She said, I'll keep calling. Days blurred. I stopped replying to messages. I blocked numbers. I deleted photos. At work, I spoke only when required. A coworker asked, you okay? I said, fine. He nodded. believing the lie. At night, I argued with myself. You trusted them, another voice said. You're stupid. I clenched my fists. Shut up, I muttered. Claire called every night. Eat something, she said. I answered, I did. She asked what? I said, coffee. She sighed. You're not alone, I snapped. I am. She replied calmly, You feel alone? I didn't correct her. She said, Tell me what hurts. I answered, everything. She said, That's a start. Sleep came in pieces. I woke from dreams where doors opened again. I woke sweating, heart racing. I checked my phone, then hated myself for hoping. Social media became a weapon. Ryan posted a joke. Lucas shared a gym photo. Comments praised them. I whispered how. I typed a message, then deleted it. They moved on, I said. Why can't you? Claire noticed my silence. You're spiraling, she said. I replied, I'm thinking. She said, Thinking isn't punishing yourself. I asked, Was I not enough? She answered fast. Stop that, I said, answer me. She said their betrayal isn't your worth. I argued. Then why me? She said, Because they're weak. I laughed bitterly. Weak feels strong to me. I replayed moments, searching for signs. You should have seen it, I told myself. Another voice replied, You trusted. I hated that word. Trust felt like a flaw. I stared at my reflection and asked, Are you a man? No answer came. I punched the wall lightly, then laughed. Pathetic, I repeated. One night Claire said, Come stay with me. I said no. She asked, Why? I answered, If I stop running, I'll break. She said, You're already broken. I whispered, I know. Silence followed. She finally said, Broken things can heal. I said, Not if you keep touching them. Stop checking their pages. I muted names. The quiet felt strange. In that quiet, thoughts sharpened. Staying like this helps them, I said aloud. The idea scared me. I didn't want to help them. I wanted peace. Claire sensed it. Something changed, she said. I replied, I'm tired of bleeding, she said. That's strength. I said, It's survival. Another sleepless night passed. I sat on the floor and breathed. You're still here, I told myself. The words felt heavier, truer. Pain didn't leave, but it shifted. It became awareness. I understood something simple. If I stayed broken, they won. I wasn't ready to fight yet, but I wasn't ready to disappear either. That realization kept me breathing until morning. Emily knocked like she belonged there. I opened the door and froze. Hi, she said softly. I stared. Why are you here? She swallowed. I need to talk, I said. You shouldn't. She stepped inside anyway. Please. My heart started racing. Say it fast. She rubbed her stomach. I'm pregnant. The room tilted. That's not funny, she whispered. I'm serious. Anger hit first. Get out, she cried. Just listen. Confusion followed anger. Whose is it? She shook her head. I don't know. I laughed sharply. You don't know? She said, Ryan or Lucas. You came to tell me this? She nodded. I didn't know where else to go. I said, try them, she whispered. They won't answer. I paced. Why would they? She cried, don't be cruel. I stopped. Cruel? She flinched. I'm scared, I said. So am I. She reached for me. I stepped back. Don't, she said. I need you. I asked for what? She hesitated. Support. I laughed again. I'm not your safety net, she sobbed. I'm carrying a life, I said, not mine. Why? She pulled out papers. I saw a doctor. I looked away. I don't care, she said. Please. Who? She replied. Dr. Helen Moore. I remembered the name. She's careful, I said. Emily nodded. She confirmed the timeline. My jaw tightened. So it matches, she whispered. Yes. Silence grew heavy. Why are you here? I asked again. She said, because you're stable. The word hurt. Stable. She nodded. You won't abandon me. I stared. Watch me. She dropped to the couch. I can't do this alone. I said, you chose alone. She cried. I made mistakes. I replied, you made decisions. She looked up. Help me raise the baby. Something snapped. No. The word felt sharp and clean. She froze. What? I said no. She shouted, you loved me. I answered, I love myself now. She covered her face. You're heartless. I shook my head. I'm awake, she argued. The baby needs a father, I said. Find the real one, she yelled. They don't want responsibility, I replied. Neither do I, she whispered. I thought you were better. I said, I am, she accused. You're punishing me, I said. I'm protecting myself. Tears soaked her hands. I trusted you. I laughed bitterly. That's rich. She stood suddenly. Dr. Moore said stress is dangerous, I said. Then leave. She gasped. You'd risk this? I said, you risked everything first. She shook. You're all I have, I answered. That ended weeks ago, she whispered. Please. I stayed quiet. She finally asked, is there any chance? I met her eyes. No. She walked toward the door slowly. I never thought you'd turn away, I replied. I never thought you'd betray me. Oh. She opened the door. I'm sorry, she said. I answered, sorry doesn't build a future. I'll remember this, I said. So will I. She left. I locked the door and slid down. My hands trembled, but my voice felt steady inside. No, I repeated softly. The word echoed differently now. It wasn't cruel. It was clear. One chose myself for the first time. The pain remained, but it no longer owned me. Emily's shadow still lingered after the door closed. I sat on the floor and said, you survived. The room stayed quiet. My phone buzzed again. Ryan, Lucas. I looked at the screen and said, no more. I blocked them both. My chest felt lighter and heavier at once. Silence is better, I told myself. For the first time, I meant it. The next morning, I called Daniel Carter. He answered with surprise. Didn't expect to hear from you, I said. I need work, he asked. You okay? I replied, I will be. He paused. Come by. I did. He studied my face and said, you look wrecked. I said, I'm focused. He nodded slowly. I have a project, I asked. What kind? He said, high risk. High pressure, I said. Good. We sat across from each other. Daniel said, this will consume you. I answered, I need that. He asked, running. I said, rebuilding. He smiled faintly. I can work with that. He warned, no excuses. I replied, I'm done explaining myself. He leaned back. Start Monday. I shook his hand. It felt like an agreement with myself. Work filled my days. Daniel pushed hard. Again, he said. I did it again. Focus, he said. I focused. When my hands shook, I steadied them. When my mind wandered, I dragged it back. Daniel noticed. You're quiet, I said. Anger wastes energy. He nodded. That's growth. I didn't feel grown. I felt disciplined. At night, my phone stayed silent. I didn't check messages. I didn't defend my name. Claire called. You sound different, she said. I replied, I stopped arguing, she asked. With who? I said, everyone. She laughed softly. I'm proud of you, I said. Don't be yet. She answered, I will anyway. Daniel and I talked during late hours. You chasing revenge? He asked once. I said no. He raised an eyebrow. Sure. I replied, revenge needs an audience. He smiled. You're learning. I said fairness never came when I begged. He answered power doesn't answer begging. I remembered those words. Ryan emailed from a new address. I deleted it. Lucas tried through a mutual friend. I said nothing. Someone asked, why aren't you fighting back? I replied, I am. They looked confused. That pleased me. I worked harder. I slept better. Pain still visited, but it knocked instead of breaking in. One evening, Daniel said, you've changed? I asked. Is that bad? he said. It's dangerous. I smiled slightly. For who? He laughed. For anyone who underestimated you. I didn't celebrate. I focused. I realized something simple. My silence unsettled them more than my anger ever could. I stopped replaying arguments in my head. I stopped imagining apologies. I stopped needing closure from people who broke me. You don't need their understanding, I told myself. You need your own. The thought scared me. It also steadied me. Weeks passed. I stood straighter. I spoke less. Daniel noticed results. You earned this, he said, handing me responsibility. I nodded. I won't waste it, he replied. I know. Trust returned slowly, earned through action. That mattered. One night, I caught my reflection and didn't look away. You're changing, I said. The man staring back looked tired, but solid. I understood then. The world didn't shift. They didn't apologize. Justice didn't announce itself. But I did change. I stopped chasing fairness and started building strength. That scared me, because strength meant I no longer needed anyone who once defined me. I heard about Ryan first. A coworker leaned close and said, Did you hear? I replied, Hear what? He said Ryan got fired. I didn't react. Why? I asked. He whispered, Office scandal. That's rough, I said. He studied my face. You okay? I answered, I'm fine. Inside, something shifted quietly. Lucas came next. Daniel mentioned it casually. Your former friend, he said. I asked, What about him? Daniel replied, Caught cheating clients. I leaned back. Serious? Daniel nodded. Very. I breathed out. I didn't touch anything, I said. Daniel said, I know. Silence settled. It felt heavy, but clean. People kept talking. Karma's real, someone joked. I didn't smile. I told myself, You didn't cause this. Another voice said, You wanted it. Both were true. I didn't celebrate. I didn't warn anyone either. I watched quietly, learning how consequences move without help. Emily called from a new number. I ignored it. She texted, Please talk. I deleted it. She showed up outside my building. 5 minutes, she pleaded. I said, No, she cried. I'm desperate. I paused, then opened the door. Say it. She rushed words out. Everything's falling apart. I replied. I noticed. She said people are talking. I answered they should. She tried to touch my arm. Don't, I said. She pulled back. Ryan's gone, she said. Lucas too, I asked. Why are you telling me? She whispered, I thought you'd understand. I laughed softly. Understanding isn't helping. She said they'd blame me. I said actions travel. She looked small. I'm scared, I replied. So was I. She begged, Can you say something? I asked, To who? She said, Anyone. I shook my head. Silence is my answer. She cried harder. You wanted this. I said, I wanted peace. She whispered, This isn't peace. Agreed. No, it's honesty. She asked, Do you hate me? I said, I don't trust you. That ended the conversation. Daniel introduced me to Mark Reynolds over coffee. He's a lawyer, Daniel said. Mark smiled. I hear you attract drama, I replied. I avoid it. Mark leaned in. Smart. Protect yourself, I asked. From what? He said, From stories changing. I nodded. I won't speak, Mark approved. Good. Let truth work. News spread faster. Emily's friends stopped calling. Invitations disappeared. I heard whispers. She ruined everything. I didn't repeat them. I didn't defend her either. At night, I asked myself, Is this enough? The answer surprised me. No, not because I wanted more damage, but because damage never fills emptiness, Claire called. You heard? She asked. I said yes. She asked, How do you feel? I thought, then answered, conflicted. She said, That's normal, I admitted. I imagined satisfaction. she replied. Reality is quieter. I sighed. Quiet hurts differently, she said. Quiet heals too. Emily texted again. I didn't reply. Ryan emailed apologies through someone else. I ignored them. Lucas sent a long message. I deleted it. Each silence felt like lifting weight. Mark warned me, don't engage. I listened. Silence became armor. I realized something watching it all collapse. Karma didn't crash in. It walked, slow and certain. It didn't ask my permission. It didn't need my anger. That humbled me. I wasn't powerful. I was simply absent. One evening, Daniel said, "You're handling this well?" I asked. "Am I?" He replied, "You're not interfering," said. "Interfering feels like ownership." He smiled. Exactly. I understood then. Their downfall wasn't my victory. My restraint was. I sat alone later and said, "This is what I wanted." The words tasted wrong. I corrected myself. This is what happened. The difference mattered. Consequences hurt more when no one pushes. I stayed silent, watching storms pass without stepping into the rain. Silence didn't mean weakness anymore. It meant control. Ryan showed up at my door at midnight. I opened it and smelled alcohol immediately. "Please," he said, swaying. "Just hear me out." I said, "You shouldn't be here." He leaned on the wall. "I lost everything." I replied, "You didn't lose me. You threw me away." He cried. "I'm sorry." I nodded. "I know." He looked confused. "That's it?" I said, "That's all you get." He tried to step closer. "I was jealous," he said. "You had everything," I answered calmly. "I had trust." He covered his face. "I hate myself," I replied. "That's yours to carry," he whispered. "Can we fix this?" I shook my head. "Some breaks don't glue back." He fell silent. "Say you forgive me," he begged. I said, "Forgiveness isn't permission." He sank down. "I don't know who I am without you," I answered. "That's not my job." He left eventually, shoulders shaking. I closed the door and felt tired, not angry. My phone buzzed. Lucas sent a long message. I read it once. "I was wrong. I betrayed you. I think about it every day. I'd do anything to take it back." I typed nothing. Another message came. "Please respond." I deleted the thread. Silence felt cleaner than words. An envelope waited on my table when I returned from work. Emily's handwriting stared at me. I opened it slowly. "I never meant to hurt you," she wrote. "I replay our memories and hate myself." I read every line without reacting. She wrote, "I understand if you never forgive me," whispered. "Then understand this." I folded the letter and placed it away. I didn't reply. Claire called that night. "You sound steady," she said. I replied, "I'm trying," she asked. "Did they reach out?" I said, "All of them." She paused. "What do you feel?" I answered honestly. "Heavy," she said. "Forgiveness isn't reunion." "Forgiveness isn't reunion," she added. "You don't owe them access." I breathed easier hearing that. Ryan texted again. "I'm outside." I replied once. "Go home," he sent, "please." I didn't answer. Lucas emailed from work. "I deserve your anger." "Right." I said nothing. Emily sent another letter digitally. "I miss you." Closed it. Each silence felt deliberate, not cruel. I met Ryan days later by accident. He said, "You won't even yell at me?" I answered, "Yelling keeps you important." He flinched. "I deserve pain." I said, "Pain doesn't heal anyone." He whispered, "Then what does?" I said, "Distance." He nodded slowly, like understanding hurt. Lucas called unexpectedly. I answered. "I won't apologize again," he said. I replied, "Good." He asked, "Do you hate me?" I said, "I don't carry you." He went quiet. "Is there a chance?" I answered, "No." He said, "That hurts." I replied, "It should." I hung up gently. Emily sent one final message. "I'm letting you go." I stared at it. Good, I whispered. Claire asked later, did you forgive them? I thought. I forgave myself, I said. She smiled through the phone. That's enough. I realized something important then. Closure didn't come from apologies. It came from boundaries. I didn't need their regret to validate my pain. I didn't need revenge to prove my worth. I spoke my truth without shouting, without insults. I simply refused to carry guilt that wasn't mine. When I walked away this time, my steps felt lighter. No hesitation followed me. I chose peace, not because they deserved it, but because I did. Months passed without announcement. Daniel said, "You earned the promotion," I replied. "I earned stability," he smiled. That's better. Work felt steady now. Not thrilling, not empty. Just solid. Claire noticed it first. "You sound lighter," she said. I answered I stopped dragging yesterday behind me. Good. I met Sophia at a quiet cafe after work. She asked, "Do you always sit by the window?" I said, "I like exits." She nodded. I like knowing where I am. That felt familiar, not threatening. We talked about books, schedules, mornings, nothing dramatic. She didn't push. "No rush," she said when I checked my watch. I replied, "Thank you." She smiled. "For what?" I said, "For not asking why. Kept meeting." She asked once. "You've been hurt?" I said. "Yes." She didn't ask for details. "We can go slow," she said. I answered, "Slow feels safe." She agreed. Safe is underrated. That word no longer scared me. "At work?" Daniel said. "You're different now?" I asked. "Better?" He replied, "Balanced." I accepted that. Balance felt like victory. I didn't check old names anymore. When one appeared, I shrugged. Not my story, I told myself. Sophia and I shared small truths. "I value routine," she said. I replied, "I value honesty." She nodded. Those fit together. She didn't compare me to anyone. I didn't compare her either. That chapter stayed closed without effort. Claire asked, "Do you miss the past?" I thought. "I miss who I thought I was," I said. She replied, "And now?" I answered, "I like who I am." She smiled through the phone. That's growth. Sophia noticed my pauses. "You drift sometimes," she said gently. I answered, "Memories knock." She replied, "Do they get in?" I said, "Not anymore." She squeezed my hand lightly. Good. No pressure followed. Trust felt earned in inches, not leaps. One night, she asked, "What do you need?" I said, "Consistency." She answered, "I can do that." I believed her because she showed it, not because she promised. I reflected often, but without bitterness. Betrayal reshaped me, but it didn't own me. It taught boundaries. It taught patience. I stopped seeking approval from ghosts. Validation came from waking up steady and sleeping without fear. Daniel congratulated me again. "You're reliable," he said. I replied. "So is my peace." He laughed. "Protect it." I already was. Sophia asked, "Are you happy?" I didn't rush the answer. "I'm content," I said. She smiled. "That's rare," I added. "It's enough." Right. She agreed. I walked past places that once hurt. Nothing pulled me back. I realized then, you're free. The thoughts stayed. One evening, Sophia said, "You don't flinch anymore." I replied, "I learned I'm not fragile," she answered. "Strong doesn't mean loud." I nodded. I know. I wasn't defined by what was taken. I was defined by what remained. Discipline, calm, choice. The victory wasn't dramatic. It was stable. And stability felt like peace, finally earned. Months later, I heard Emily was raising the child alone. Neither Ryan nor Lucas offered help. Someone mentioned it casually. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. "That's their reality," I said softly to myself. Silence felt appropriate. No celebration. No bitterness. Just understanding. Life had moved without me needing to interfere. I walked past our old neighborhood once. The streets didn't haunt me anymore. A cafe played soft music. I said, I survived that. My voice barely reached the walls. Claire called later. Do you ever think about them? I replied, only to remind myself why distance matters. She laughed softly. Distance healed you. I answered, distance taught me strength. Ryan tried once to email. I deleted it. Lucas sent a message through a friend. I ignored it. Emily reached out once cautiously. I read her words, then deleted them without reply. None of them could touch me anymore. Their absence wasn't cruel, it was necessary. Justice isn't loud, I murmured. It's quiet. It's survival. I reflected on everything I'd endured. Betrayal, heartbreak, humiliation. I forgave myself for trusting too much. I whispered, nah, VIT weakness. It was learning. Each mistake had shaped me, hardened me, clarified my boundaries. I no longer sought validation from those who broke me. Their guilt didn't define me. My peace did. Sophia called one evening. You sound different, she said. I smiled quietly. I finally know my value, she laughed softly. That feels good, I said. It's not joy, not anger. It's knowing I control my life, she asked. Do you regret anything? I thought carefully. No, regret belongs to them. I choose forward. I remembered the nights I couldn't sleep, pacing my apartment, the memories that attacked relentlessly. Now, those ghosts were still, distant, powerless. I survived everything, I said, and I built something they cannot touch. It wasn't revenge, not in the traditional sense. It was life lived fully. It was boundaries maintained. It was self-respect earned. I stood by the window, looking at the city lights. They're gone, I whispered, and I'm better for it. The thought settled warmly, without tension. I didn't need apologies. I didn't need them to suffer. Their choices shaped their lives. My choices shaped mine. That distinction felt absolute. I closed my journal, reflecting on months of rebuilding. Work, discipline, quiet victories. Friendships that mattered, people who showed up. Conversations with Sophia that reminded me trust could exist safely. Claire's voice anchoring me. None of it was loud, none of it demanded notice, yet all of it mattered deeply. I said, this is my justice. Quiet, certain. No one could reach me now, not with betrayal, not with lies, not with regret. I am untouchable, I said softly. Not arrogant, just aware. My life had become mine. I walked away from old doors, from old pain, and felt the weight lift slowly, steadily. It wasn't dramatic, but it was complete. I whispered to the empty room. I didn't win by hurting them. I won by living, by being someone they can no longer reach. The night remained calm. No applause, no vindication, only clarity, only strength, only the quiet, unshakable knowledge that I had survived, grown, and now moved forward finally free.